There are those TV shows that feel good and never let us down. Then there are those where the writers seem to be a bit sadistic. These shows are sometimes hard to watch as one or more of the best characters can die or undergo a bad experience. These are the scenes from popular TV shows that made fans heartbroken. Will Gardner's death in The Good Wife. When an actor's contract hasn't been renewed and reports that he or she will not be back for the next season begin to circulate, fans can usually predict the death or abrupt leave of a favorite character from the show. Although it was completely unexpected, the death of Will Gardner, Josh Charles, during season 5, who was shot in the courtroom by his own client, was met with displeasure by fans of The Good Wife. They worked carefully to ensure that the death came as a complete surprise to viewers, and they were able to predict and prepare for negative reactions from viewers. Immediately following the broadcast of the episode, series co-writers Michelle and Robert King published an open letter explaining their decision to terminate the character's existence. "We could send him off to Seattle, he could get disbarred, or get married, or go off to Borneo to do good work. But there was something in the passion that Will and Alicia shared that made distance a meager hurdle," they explained. "The brutal honesty and reality of death sparks to the truth and tragedy of bad timing for these two characters. Will's death propels Alicia into her newest incarnation, The Walking Dead Indifference. Carol considered Rick and their fellow survivors to be members of her family. Because of this, when a terrible strain of flu began wiping out the occupants of their prison fortress, she stepped up, as she called it, by assassinating deathly ill Karen and David to prevent them from spreading the disease to others. Unfortunately, as a result of her actions, she lost Rick's confidence to the point where he exiled her. 'Rick, it's me,' she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Her good old buddy was unfazed. We, on the other hand, were shattered." When we learn why there are no photos of Maggie on The Simpsons. Homer narrates the account of Marge's pregnancy when questioned why there aren't any pictures of Maggie around the house. Homer abandoned his nuclear plant work to pursue his dream career of building a bowling alley before they found out there was a third on the way. But when they found out that another bundle was on the way and how much it would cost them, he went back to Mr. Burns and begged for his old job. As a punishment, Burns hung a plaque in front of his desk that read, "Don't forget, you're here forever," to remind Homer that he was his priority. At that point, Bart jumped in and inquired as to why there were no images of Maggie, and Homer replied with a smile that there were, exactly where he needed them. And it's at this point that we see the plaque in his office, which has a collage of Maggie images placed over the words, making a new saying, "Do it for her." Kate reads Paul's last letter to his daughters, 8 simple dating rules for my teenage daughter. The sudden death of John Ritter threw serious doubt on the success of his famous sitcom and caused genuine anguish to the audience. The actor's death, which was caused by an undiagnosed aortic tear, stunned Hollywood as well as the cast and staff of his television show. Because of Ritter's passing, the writers prepared an episode named Goodbye to commemorate his life. While out shopping, his character's wife, Katie Seagal, discovers that he has died. Towards the end of the episode, Seagal gathers her girls in their bedroom and reads Ritter's character's final call-in. He worked as a writer, as they all hug and cry, mourning not just their television father, but also the loss of their beloved John Ritter. Ned Stark's death on Game of Thrones. The first season of Game of Thrones was a masterful deconstruction of any spectator preconceptions, demonstrating that this was not going to be a typical fantasy series, but rather a tense political affair in which no character was safe from the executioner's blade. The death of Ned Stark was the final straw that brought this to the attention of the public. It's likely that many people assume that Ned Stark will be a key figure in the future because of the casting of Sean Bean and the heroic traits of Ned Stark in the first season. Marissa Cooper dies in a fiery car crash during the season 3 finale of The OC. Producers of The OC ultimately put Marissa, played by Misha Barton, out of her misery after torturing her with familial difficulties and substance abuse issues, not to mention having her shoot her boyfriend's brother on the show. According to The Hollywood Reporter, series co-star Josh Schwartz was taken aback by the varied response to Marissa's death. There were some people who celebrated, and at the time, those were the people who were the most vocal, Schwartz said, adding that he later heard from a large number of furious fans as well. There was a lot of anger and fan art that came our way, he admitted. Dr. Mark Green's death on ER. The death of Dr. Green on the television show ER left the audience in tears. Despite the fact that his personal life had fallen apart, he'd been separated from his wife and had broken off his relationship with their child. Everything changed for him when he was diagnosed with an aggressive, fatal brain tumor. Though he didn't have long to live, he made amends with his family and invited them to accompany him on one more family vacation to Hawaii, where he will spend the remainder of his days. That moment when his daughter puts a pair of headphones over his ears and the song Over the Rainbow begins to play as dad drifts off into death will leave you in tears. Phoebe alone with babies after giving birth. Friends on NBC was a sitcom that had a lot of comedy and a little bit of human drama. One of the show's most moving storylines was Phoebe becoming a surrogate mother for her brother and his wife and giving birth to triplets as a result. Following the birth of the babies, Phoebe, Lisa Kudrow, is alone in her hospital room holding the babies in her arms. Kudrow delivers a heartfelt monologue as she offers them wisdom and bids them farewell. The sequence tugs at the audience's emotions as we witness Phoebe's desire to become a mother for the first time. We also witness the anguish she feels as a result of her damaged relationship with her own mother, Terry Garr. Game of Thrones Red Wedding. Is it possible that anything else could have come to an end above the Red Wedding? If Ned Stark's death in Season 1 was shocking, the Red Wedding in Season 3 was heart attack inducing in terms of its shock factor, according to the writers. Seeing Robb Stark, the King of the North, his wife, his unborn child, and his mother slain in one of the most heinous acts of treachery, such a shock that the tragedy made headlines all across the world, even outside of the fictional universe. Glenn's violent and sadistic death on Walking Dead. By the time producers took off Glenn, Stephen Yeun, one of the show's most adored characters, in the Season 7 premiere, fans of The Walking Dead had become accustomed to being upset. Following the conclusion of the previous season on a cliffhanger, the producers hoped to shock viewers by revealing which characters suffered an untimely demise at the hands of Negan, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and his baseball bat in the next season's premiere. Despite the fact that the filming of many death scenarios was done in order to minimize leaks and spoilers, fans were aware that Glenn would die. They just didn't foresee how violent, disgusting, and cruel the moment would turn out to be. Fans took to social media to express their displeasure with the show as a result of the incident, and the show's creators replied by openly arguing over whether or not they had toned down the violence as a result of the criticism. Gail Ann Hurd, the executive producer and director of the series, said that the violence in the latter episodes of Season 7 had been toned down. Executive producer and director Greg Nicotera has denied this assertion. When Ted's wife's identity was revealed, fans of How I Met Your Mother were outraged to hear she had been deceased for years. The series finale of How I Met Your Mother is still regarded as one of the most divisive finales in television history. Many fans were disappointed to learn that Ted, Josh Radnor, married Tracy, Kristen Milioti, after 9 seasons, and that she had already been dead for 6 years when the character began telling his adolescent children the story of how they met. Carter Bays, the show's co-creator, replied to the disappointment of viewers on Twitter by stating that an alternate ending would be featured on the DVD. Derek's death on Grey's Anatomy. Fans of Grey's Anatomy should have known that no one on the medical drama was ever saved. But the death of Derek Shepherd, Patrick Dempsey, was too much for many of the show's longtime viewers. More than 100,000 people signed a petition to bring Derek back after the episode aired. Many called for a boycott of the show. Shonda Rhimes, the show's creator, stood by her choice to kill off the fan favorite, explaining that the character died to preserve the 11th season love story. That is all we have time for today. What's your take on these television episodes?